Hello, good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. The eligibility criteria for RON 95 fuel subsidy will, among others, factor in the size of household, employment status, and the number of vehicles a family owns. Deputy Domestic Trade and Cost of Living Minister Fuzia Saleh says the eligibility will also take into account basic expenses for decent living and cost of living index calculated by the Department of Statistics.
Memang diambil kira. Maksudnya kalau ada dua kereta, kalau ada dua orang bekerja, isteri bekerja, suami bekerja, kalau ada anak sekolah yang kecil, ya, yang pergi sekolah ataupun anak belajar di universiti, semuanya termasuk di dalam perkiraan indikator kos sara hidup tersebut.
Earlier this month, the Department of Statistics released a report analysing the cost of living index and the new basic expenditure for decent living, covering demographics, household characteristics and size as well as location. In October, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim announced plans to retarget RON 95 subsidies by mid-next year to ensure they benefit those who need them the most.
The QR code immigration clearance system for Malaysia to Singapore travellers is expected to be expanded to all modes of transport. Home Minister Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail says the trial phase involving motorcyclists and bus travellers had been effective during peak hours and will continue after the end of this month.
Sekarang ni sistem kita guna adalah sistem M-Bike. Okey, sistem M-Bike dia ambil masa lebih kurang 8 saat lah. Tapi kalau sekarang QR code dia mengambil masa 5 saat kalau single rider. Kalau dia bawa pembonceng jadi 6 saat. Rakan-rakan media tolong hargai penjimatan 2-3 saat ni sebenarnya sangat signifikan untuk laluan ini. Jadi dalam 1 jam QR code tu boleh menampung sehingga 750 lebih. Berbanding sekarang ni sekitar dalam 500-600.
Saifuddin added that the government aims to fully implement the system by next year.
Police now have the power to freeze and seize funds from bank accounts suspected of being mule accounts. Deputy Law and Institutional Reform Minister M. Kulasegaran says this follows amendments to the Penal Code and Criminal Procedure Code, which came into force on October 30th.
The amended laws also give police the power to block suspicious transactions in real time, preventing scammers from withdrawing stolen funds. They also allow police officers with a rank of sergeant or higher to seize or prohibit transactions involving funds suspected of being linked to criminal activities. Kulasegaran was responding to a question at the Dewan Rakyat about new laws aimed at temporarily halting suspicious transactions. He said the National Centre reports 52,836 scam-related calls between October 2022 and September this year, with victims losing more than 302 million ringgit.
In other news, the trailer driver involved in an accident that killed a 21-year-old woman in Penang has pleaded not guilty to a charge of dangerous driving. 51-year-old Marhizan Johari is accused of causing death by reckless or dangerous driving under the Road Transport Act 1987.
If found guilty, he could be sentenced to 10 years of prison, fined up to 50,000 ringgit and get his driving license suspended for 5 years. Last Wednesday, a container from the trailer he was driving toppled and crushed Lizero's car, causing her death at Jalan Bukit Tengah, Bukit Mertajam. The container also hit another car, leading to a 25-year-old man sustaining injuries. Marhizan had allegedly lost control of his vehicle when attempting a sharp left turn at a traffic junction. The Deputy Public Prosecutor had asked the court to deny Marhizan bail after he flashed a peace sign during his remand. As a result, the magistrate denied Marhizan bail and set January 24th for the receipt of Puspakom's report on the crash, as well as medical and post-mortem reports. The accused was unrepresented.
Meanwhile, the defense team for 4 assistant teachers accused of sexual assault charges linked to Global Equine Services and Business GISB will submit a second representation to the Attorney General's chambers. Lawyer Datuk Hanif Hassan says his clients, all in their early 20s, instructed him to make fresh representation, which seek to review the charges and sentences, considering their age.
The second representation follows the rejection of the first submission by the State Prosecution Director last month. The 4 accused are charged with multiple counts of physical sexual assault against boys aged between 9 and 11. The charges span incidents that allegedly occurred between 2022 and 2023. According to the charges, the accused committed sexual assault against 5 boys, 3 of whom are siblings.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
Rambut gugur lagi? Macam mana Gunakan Pantene Baharu dengan provitamin mikro yang meresap dan menguatkan rambut dari dalam. Rambut 10 kali lebih kuat terhadap rambut gugur. Pantene Baharu.
Sesi pencalonan High Council. 3, 2, 1. Kau nak jadi amlah kau. Guna tu tepat kau saja.
Malaysia is spearheading efforts to establish a comprehensive carbon framework across ASEAN. This initiative will lead discussions on the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework (ACCF) in collaboration with key stakeholders from Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore.
This statement will reflect our commitment to ambitious climate goals, regional cooperation, and the acceleration of sustainable development initiatives. By leading this effort, Malaysia aims to strengthen ASEAN's position in global climate discussions and drive meaningful progress in addressing the climate crisis.
According to Nick Nazmi, this framework will act as a catalyst for broader carbon cooperation, accelerating low-carbon investments across ASEAN. The ACCF initiative will open opportunities for ASEAN economies to work together in creating demand for carbon credits within the region. The event also featured the signing of a memorandum of cooperation on the ACCF between the involved parties.
Meanwhile, Singapore has identified 3 strategic initiatives to bolster the carbon credit market in the region. According to Stanley Loh, Singapore's Parliamentary Secretary for Sustainability and the Environment, these initiatives focus on accelerating demand, facilitating projects, and pioneering innovative carbon market concepts.
Singapore has introduced its International Carbon Credit Framework, allowing carbon tax liable companies in Singapore to use eligible carbon credits to offset 5% of their taxable emissions from this year onwards. This means that there's a certain base load of demand because companies have to buy the credits. We have published eligibility criteria for the carbon credits, requiring them to comply with Article 6 of the Paris Agreement.
On to other news, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres calls on G20 members to use their power of leverage to tackle key global issues such as climate and peace. He also emphasized the need for peace in Gaza, Ukraine, and Sudan.
And they have come to Rio with a simple message. G20 leaders must lead. And G20 countries, by definition, have tremendous economic clout and they yield massive diplomatic leverage. They must use it to tackle key global problems.
G20 countries account for 85% of the world's economy and are the largest contributors to multilateral development banks helping to steer climate finance. They are also responsible for more than 3/4 of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. Reaching agreement may only get tougher with the return to power of US President-elect Donald Trump, who is reportedly preparing to again pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord. Trump is also planning to roll back landmark climate legislation passed by outgoing President Joe Biden, who visited the Amazon rainforest when he made a stop there on Sunday on his way to Rio. UN Climate Chief Simon Steele wrote a letter to G20 leaders on Saturday imploring them to act on climate finance, including boosting grants for developing nations and advancing reforms of multilateral development banks. However, the same fights that have plagued COP29 since it began last week are spilling over into G20 negotiations, according to diplomats close to the Rio talks.
Meanwhile, a roadmap for the next general election in Bangladesh will be unveiled once electoral reforms are complete. Interim leader Muhammad Yunus says this in an address to the nation as he marked his first 100 days in office.
Political parties, including the Bangladesh Nationalist Party (BNP), led by former Prime Minister Khalida Zia, have been pressing the interim government for a clear plan to hold a national election as soon as possible. About 1,500 people died in protests that brought down Bangladesh's longest-serving Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina this year, and as many as 3,500 may have been forcibly abducted during her regime, said Yunus. Yunus vowed to ensure justice for victims, adding that the government had begun efforts to bring those responsible for the disappearances and killings and the July-August violence to international courts. The protests, which began in July as a student-led movement against public sector job quotas, escalated into some of the deadliest unrest since Bangladeshi independence in 1971, forcing Hasina to flee to India.
Over in India, capital New Delhi has switched all schools to online classes starting today as toxic smog chokes the city. Pollution levels have surged to more than 60 times the World Health Organization's recommended limit. Authorities hope by keeping children at home, traffic will be reduced.
The dangerous PM2.5 particles linked to cancer and heart disease peaked at 907 micrograms per cubic meter. For comparison, the WHO says anything above 15 micrograms is unhealthy. Primary schools had already shut last week. Now officials are imposing tighter restrictions, including restrictions on diesel trucks and construction activity. The city's annual smog crisis is driven by stubble burning in neighboring states, along with factory emissions and traffic fumes. Despite repeated government efforts, the pollution continues to claim thousands of lives each year.
That's all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. Do check out our revamped English web portal, delivering in-depth news and analysis to keep you informed on critical events shaping our world, all at international.astroawani.com. Thanks for watching. I'm Saraya Mia, and good night.